Tell Courtney and Jack.
These are damn true stories. I mean,
What is a catboard, and why does everybody call you that? And who in the world calls you Charlie besides me?
All right. I'll go back to the third day I was in the coal mines. Third day. When you go to work in the mines, at that time we had new safety laws that Richard Nixon got us, mine safety. And for 90 days you had to stay in contact with a veteran miner, all right, to make sure you don't get killed, and to guide you. Well, I had an easy job. I was on the material crew, and I worked with an old black man named John Brown III. He lived in Inslee, Alabama. And he walked around with a pad, and he would, if they needed car timbers, this is Concord, where we had trolley lines. We hauled all of our material by train down the slope, by train from there to the sections. Then the timbers, everything went. Miners, everything had to go that way. All right. Well, I was working with John Brown, and our job was to switch the cars out. If Section 3 was getting so much material, they'd have a number on that mine car, and we'd put it over here, and when they'd come in to get the empties, they'd carry the material back with them. Very, very good U.S. Steel. And so we would swap them out at the bottom of the slope. The slope is a grade that comes in from the top. It's along a rope. It's cars tied together with seats in them, and it lets men in and out called the man trip.
How wide are those things?
The slope is probably 8 foot wide, but they're probably as high as I am now. You're probably about another foot up above, and it's about 4 men. No top over or nothing because it was slope.
Right.
You had to clean the slate. And most of them was gun-nighted anyway. Concord was made in 1948. It was a real old mine when I got there. But I was helping John Brown, and one morning, the third morning, I'd catch the first trip under it, about 4 going down carrying people and 4 coming out carrying people. You go down and get a load.
Right, come up.
Right. Well, I went down early, and I'd go over there. Johnny taught me how to run that little 11-ton motor. And that was a little electric locomotive that run trolley wire that was kind of like a little dinky and to move stuff around.
Sure.
And we'd use them to go in section one-man operation. And so I got on that thing, and I turned them controls. He sat like this, and the controls was in the middle of it. He had a thing that turned that made it go, or you flip it back and make it back up, but you had to turn that wire around. You had a lot of stuff too. Moving that trolley line, when you'd go down from line to line, you'd have to move it while you're going. But I got on that thing, and I'd turn that thing wide open and watch them wheels spin. Sparks going there, I'd have a good time. Well, third day, John Brown, I was down there already on the motor, ready to go. Because I wanted to run it that day. I didn't want to do what John was doing. And that's what he trained me for to do, because he liked making sure everything was right. Well, John comes up to me, and we're right in the bottom of the slope. And there's 60 men in this cutout hole in the wall, sitting on the bench, ready to catch the slope. When we moved that material off, it was going to get on the slope right out. Right. 60 of them. Been working all day long. All right. Well, they pulled that car in there, and it was car timbers. And a timber, when you cut the coal, you set it. It's a tree.
Right.
Set it up. My capboard is a wedge, about like this, about thick on one end, nothing on the other end. You hold it up above, you'd measure it, cut it off, hold that capboard up there and drive a hammer on it, and it'd wedge it, and it'd hold that top up from falling.
How wide? Like how big? So, what is it? A foot by a foot, or what? I mean, how big is the top?
The cap box?
Yeah, the cap.
Probably 6 inches by 12 inches.
Okay.
Something like that. But
Flat.
thick on one end.
A wedge.
Wedge. It was a wedge. That's what it is, a wedge. They called them capboards. And so there's a car timbers right behind my motor. That was pine timbers. And they had a big old thing of capboards in it, you know, right behind my motor. Well, I went out there and I hooked to that car and I backed up to get it cut off, and old John Brown was standing there, and this way he talked. He said, he called me biggin, because I was so big at the time, and he called me biggin. And he walked out there and he was looking at that pad, and he said, biggin? He said, we gotta move these cars today, but if you yank these cars like you did yesterday, I'm gonna have to take a catboard and wear your ass out because you nearly cut my foots off. And you gotta reach in between it, pull that coupling, uncouple it, and it was probably the true. One of them didn't have the handles on them from the side. Well, I'm sitting there on the motor like that with my yellow hat on, and I say, John, I don't believe you can do it. About that time, this big old white guy named Larry Northcutt, he had arms this big around. He grabbed me around the throat, and they pulled me off that motor, and it was about this high. And he leaned my ass down on that motor, and he looked at me and he said, boy, let me tell you something. He said, down here, black or white, don't you ever disrespect your elders. Boys, get the boards. And then about 30 of them reached in there and got one of them capboards, and they wore my ass out. Pow! Each one of them had one hit. It hurt, man. It brought tears to my eyes and pissed me off, you know. But hey, you go, hell, I was in the motor, and Larry Northcote was like a sumo wrestler. Strong, you know.
And they've been working all day.
Before that, though, I found out later, his brother, Clarence Northcote, was my football coach at Hueytown when I played high school football. But, yeah, that's what they told me. Well, it hurt my feelings. And I worked the rest of the day. So next day, I went out there on the hill trip. It was steps waiting to catch it to go back underground, you know, waiting area. I was sitting there, and the first trip went under. Second trip went under, and then with my right trip, I used to ride the first one in, but that day I rode the one I was supposed to ride in. And John come up there, and right before it got there, he said, we gotta get down there today. He said, I don't guess he could think of biggin. And he said, Capboard? He said, I want you to come on, we got to go. Well, then from then on, old John would call me Capboard. Well, he heard the people outside heard him call me Capboard, so they started calling me Capboard. And that's just what a capboard is.
Ain't that something?
And when I went to work for the union, I was dating this girl in Minnesota, and she was a union rep for ASME. All right. Well, she was at some convention somewhere, and the president of our union spoke, which is now the secretary-treasurer of AFL-CIO. He's a head labor person in this country. All right. He was there to speak as a mine worker president. Well, she walked up to him, and she was talking to him about how well his speech was, you know. She used to want autographed pictures or different things autographed by him, you know. Hell, I could get anything, you know. I'd feed $1, you know. That's how you get well known. You give a little, you know. Well, Mary walked up to him. She said, told her who she was. And she said, I'm dating one of your international reps. And he said, well, one of my international reps, you way up here in Minnesota? Well, I'd met her on strike in Wyoming. She brought a bunch of money down from ASME to her.
I see.
And that's how I met her. Well, she said, yeah, Charlie Tipton. He said, Charlie Tipton?
Who does that?
He said, I'm sorry, I don't have a Charlie Tipton on my staff. And she said, well, he goes by some crazy name named Capboard. He said, oh yeah, Capboard. Yeah. He didn't know her name. And when Mama died, right before she died, towards the end, about, I guess right after the beginning, she would call me Capboard instead of Charlie. Because everybody called me Capboard.
Or everybody, yeah.
So Mama started calling me Capboard finally, you know. But, no, that's how I got that name. And I've learned a lesson in you don't disrespect. But that's
great.
Story.
So nobody calls you Charlie anymore?
Nobody calls me Charlie, but maybe
the doctors?
Yeah, the doctors and maybe one or two other people. Yeah. Everybody calls me Cap. Clap.
Right. Clap.
Clapboard, Capboard, chalkboard. I heard it all. I just answered everything.
Capboard calls you Cap Block.
Cap block, yeah.
I like chalkboard.
They just call me everything. But, yeah. When I met Lisa, and me and Lisa got married, well, another thing you got in mind, you got a pin. That's what I used to do. I'd drill a hole up in the roof, and then I'd put this bolt on it, and put the bolt in there and tighten it up to a certain torque, and it would layer that rock like plywood, put it together like plywood, and it'd keep it from falling down. We'd test it, do a test drill, see how high we go to get solid rock. You could tell the way it was drilling. And but there's a board. If you have like a tree up in the roof, bottom of the tree cut off, like if a tree was standing up and half of it's gone, a pot, tree pot, would be there. You'd take a board that was about this long, this wide, with a hole in the middle for the bolt to go through, and you'd put it up there and you'd put it over on that pot, then tighten it up. And them pots what kill a lot of people. It's a petrified tree up in the roof. And when you cut that coal out, it looks like it's not there, but after time, it'll turn loose. And that's what kills a lot of people in the coal mine. Rock falls will be a pot, like a tree. You might have seen them, petrified trees. Yeah.
And that's just from, there used to be a tree, right?
It used to be a tree.
And it's rock, it's mineralized.
Millions of years old.
Yeah.
Right there. And you find birds.
Yeah.
You find all kind of firms and everything.
Right.
But you find anything now, you know, I never felt nothing like it, but I did find it in a mine that was in Illinois. I got to go in to inspect, and they had like, what do you call it, Fusco?
Yeah.
But it would look
Bauxite.
like a sand dollar. It was about that big around. It was solid, wasn't gold, but it looked like gold. Rock was, some pyrite, I think.
Pyrite, yeah, right.
It was like that, but it was real thin. It looked just like a sand dollar. I used to have one and it got crushed. But that was the only mine them was found in, was in that mine. They were in between the pieces of coal.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. But,
no telling the fossils that have been burned in
oh yeah.
in
Yeah.
power plants and all that.
But I used to find a lot of them down there. And I told them out, you know.
And the trees, I guess the big ones were too heavy. You couldn't really do nothing with them, right?
Oh no, well they'd
You just leave them?
parts you could get pieces of.
Oh, okay.
But I know one boy, he's got a trunk right where it goes into the ground. You know how it kind of spreads out, about that thick, probably 6 foot around. He got that in a strip mine. He's got it sitting in his front yard.
That's cool.
I got one around here somewhere. I don't know where it is. It's up in that trailer.